You're not ready for what's about to take place this third week of April. Something is being burned out of your life right now, and it's happening for a reason. And that shift is permanent. Because this isn't about change for the sake of change. This is something reaching its end exactly when it was meant to. And once you see what's actually being burned this week, you'll understand why it had to happen now. Stay with me, because what's actually getting burned this week is not what most people think. This week isn't taking anything from you. It's closing something you've been unconsciously paying into. Not a punishment, not some delayed consequence. A tab. There are things in your life right now that only exist because you keep feeding them. Connections that run on history instead of meaning. Goals that belong to a version of you that doesn't even exist anymore. And the truth is, none of it collapsed because you were still covering the cost. Time, attention, energy, you kept it alive. But this week, something shifts. You don't feel the need to hold it together the way you used to. And the moment that happens, it reveals something most people never catch. It was never stable. It was sustained. That's why this doesn't feel like loss. It feels like something quietly releasing you from a role you didn't realize you were stuck in. And once that release starts, something else begins to happen. This week doesn't hit all at once. It moves in phases, and if you miss the pattern, you'll think it's random when it's actually precise. The first phase is exposure. Something that's been sitting right in front of you suddenly becomes undeniable. Not new information, not a shocking reveal, just a level of clarity you can't ignore anymore. A dynamic, a pattern, a truth about someone, or even about yourself that was always there. But now it stands out in a way that makes it impossible to pretend otherwise. Don't rush to fix it or explain it. Just let it be seen. Clarity doesn't arrive to comfort you. It arrives to remove your ability to lie to yourself. Then comes the pressure phase. This is where most people fold because this is where things stop being passive. What you've been putting off starts demanding movement. Conversations you delayed feel like they're closing in. Decisions you kept in the background now feel urgent, not because something external is forcing you, but because you can't unsee what you've already seen. This is the burn at its peak. It's uncomfortable, but it's also where everything shifts. What you avoid doesn't disappear. It builds pressure until you can't stand still anymore. And then, without warning, it settles. The third phase isn't loud. It's just the moment where everything stops resisting. What's left is simple, clear, real. Not what you hoped would stay, not what you feared would fall apart, just what actually remains when nothing is being forced anymore. When the pressure leaves, what stays was never at risk. And once you reach that point, something else begins to happen, because what used to slow you down doesn't feel the same anymore. The same things that used to weigh on you start pushing you forward, not emotionally, not dramatically, just clean movement. The frustration you felt before doesn't come back the same way. Instead of pulling you into overthinking, it sharpens your direction. You don't sit there trying to figure things out for hours. You just know what's not worth your time anymore, and that alone speeds everything up. What once felt like setbacks start making sense in a different way. Not as lessons, not as growth moments, but as filters. They removed options you were never supposed to keep open. What used to drain you was never meant to stay. It was there to show you where not to build. And because of that, hesitation drops. You don't go back and forth the way you used to. Certain paths don't even register as choices anymore. You're not forcing discipline, you're not trying to stay focused. It just happens because there's less noise pulling you in different directions. This isn't emotional reaction. It's not driven by frustration or pain. It's movement built on elimination. The moment you stop considering what you've outgrown is the moment everything starts moving faster. And once that speed picks up, something else becomes clear. There are things and people that simply can't follow you into what's next. There were moments where you could have said everything. You could have exposed, reacted, escalated, made sure people felt exactly what they put you through. And you didn't. Not because you couldn't, but because something in you chose not to go there. Most people think that restraint means you lost something, that you let things slide, that you missed your moment. But what you didn't realize is that every time you held back, you weren't losing power. You were storing it. And this week, it converts. Not into confrontation, not into some dramatic comeback, into position. You start noticing that you're no longer in the same place as the people or situations that once affected you. You don't need to explain yourself, you don't need to prove anything, and most importantly, you don't feel the need to go back and settle anything. The strongest move you made was the one you never showed. What they did doesn't disappear, but it stops mattering. Not because it was justified, but because you outgrew the need to respond to it. And that shift is what changes everything. You didn't win by reacting. You won by moving past the entire situation. Revenge keeps you tied to the moment. Growth makes the moment irrelevant. And the moment something becomes irrelevant, it loses all power over you. And now it's time for today's comment of the day. I trust that I'm not behind and not late. I am at the exact point where things start to move. Amen. I really like this comment from the last video. It's reassuring. A lot of people carry this quiet pressure, feeling like they should be further ahead, like they missed something, like they're late to their own life. But this mindset releases that. You're not behind. You're not off track. You're where you are. And from that place, things can still shift, grow, and unfold. Sometimes the moment things start moving is right after you stop rushing your own timing. Thank you for sharing this. Just when something is about to end completely, it doesn't always fade quietly. It circles back, but not in the way you expect. Not a full return, not a restart, just a brief reappearance, a message that feels out of place, a situation that looks familiar, a thought that seems like it's trying to pull you back into something you already moved past. And this is where people get it wrong. They think they're slipping, that they're going backwards, that somehow everything is resetting. It's not. It's the final check. The last test isn't meant to trap you. It's meant to show you that you're no longer the same. What comes back this week doesn't come back with the same weight. It doesn't feel as strong, as convincing, or as important as it once did. That's the sign. Not that it's returning, but that it's leaving. You're not being pulled back in. You're being shown, one last time, what no longer has access to you. And if you can see it clearly, without reacting, without stepping back into it, that's when it closes for real. This is the part most people get wrong because they think this kind of week requires action in the obvious sense. Fixing things, having conversations, trying to control outcomes. That's not what works here. What works is knowing exactly where not to put your energy. The first thing is simple, but most people won't do it. Stop explaining yourself to people who are not moving with you. This week will tempt you hard. You'll feel the urge to clarify your decisions, justify your distance, make people understand why you're changing or why something doesn't sit right anymore. And it will feel important. Like if you just say it the right way, they'll finally get it. But they won't. Not because they're incapable, but because they're not in the same position as you anymore. Every explanation you give is energy spent trying to maintain something that's already shifting out. You don't need to be understood by people who are no longer aligned with where you're going. Redirect that energy, put it into movement, not communication. Let your actions carry what you're trying to say. The right people won't need the breakdown. They'll recognize it without you translating it. The second thing is where people accidentally create resistance. Let small things end without interfering. Not everything that slows down or falls apart this week is a problem. A conversation fading out, a plan not happening, a connection going quiet. These are not failures that need fixing. These are adjustments happening in real time. And most people step in too quickly because they're uncomfortable with things ending without control. You don't need to revive everything. You don't need to check in on every silence. Sometimes the most important shifts happen in things so small you almost miss them. What quietly ends without your interference was never meant to be held together by you. Let it complete. Let it close. Even if it feels unfinished, even if it feels like there should have been more. That discomfort is temporary, but forcing something to continue when it's already winding down creates a longer-term weight you don't need. The third thing is where this week becomes real. You have to get honest about something most people avoid. What you've been calling patience might not be patience at all. It might be hesitation. It might be you waiting because moving forward means stepping into something unknown, and that's uncomfortable. There's a difference between timing and avoidance, and this week makes that difference impossible to ignore. If you've been telling yourself it's not the right time yet, look closer. Is it really timing, or is it fear dressed up as wisdom? This week removes the hiding places. You'll feel it in the moments where you hesitate for no clear reason, where you pause, even though you already know what needs to happen. Patience builds when something is growing. Fear hides when something is ready. And once you see that clearly, you can't go back to pretending you don't know the difference. That's why this week feels intense, not because it's forcing you to act, but because it's removing your ability to stay in between. And once you stop staying in between, what remains becomes very easy to recognize. The idea of a karmic burn sounds like everything gets wiped out, like you're left starting from nothing. That's not what happens. What happens is more precise. The things that weren't built on constant effort, constant explanation, constant emotional investment, they don't collapse. They remain, but they don't feel the same. The connections that are real don't need maintenance the way others did. They feel lighter, more natural, like they exist without you having to keep proving or reinforcing them. There's no pressure to hold them together, no underlying tension that you have to manage. They just are, and that's how you know. What survives without effort was never dependent on your struggle. The same thing happens with direction. The goals that actually belong to you don't feel overwhelming anymore. They don't feel like something you have to force yourself into. They become clearer, more direct, almost like the path removed its unnecessary layers. You're not trying to figure out 10 different options. You're moving with fewer but stronger ones. That's what the burn does. It filters. It doesn't destroy everything. It removes what required too much from you just to exist. And here's the part most people overlook. If something survives, it falls into one of two categories. Either it's meant to stay, or it's something you now see clearly enough to remove without confusion. Because sometimes things don't burn out on their own. Sometimes they stay just long enough for you to recognize them fully without emotion clouding your judgment. If it survives the burn and still feels heavy, it's not meant to stay. It's meant to be seen clearly enough for you to finally let it go. By the end of this week, you're not left with more. You're left with what's real. What doesn't require constant energy? What doesn't need to be explained? What doesn't depend on who you used to be? And once you experience that, you stop fearing endings altogether because you understand they were never there to take from you. They were there to leave you with what actually holds. When something truly ends on a karmic level, it doesn't just shift your thoughts or your circumstances. It changes how it feels to exist inside your own body. That's the part most people don't expect because they're looking for mental clarity or external signs, when the real signal shows up physically. This week, for some of you, the first thing you'll notice isn't a realization, it's a release. It might be subtle at first. Your jaw isn't as tight as it usually is. Your shoulders drop without you forcing them to. You take a deeper breath without thinking about it. You sit still and realize your body isn't bracing for something that never even had a name. And that's when it hits you. You were carrying something the entire time. Not consciously, not in a way you could easily point to. But it was there, built into how you held yourself, how you reacted, how you stayed ready for situations that never fully resolved. Your body keeps track of everything your mind tries to move past too quickly. Every time you said it's fine when it wasn't. Every time you stayed composed when something in you was pushing back. Every time you adjusted yourself just to keep something stable that was already unstable. All of that doesn't disappear just because you decided to move on. It gets stored. Your mind can move on from something in a day. Your body waits until it's actually over. And that's what makes this week different. Something doesn't just make sense. It completes. And when it completes, your body responds immediately. Not with excitement, not with some dramatic emotional high, but with something far more real. You feel lighter, not in a way you can fully explain, not in a way that comes with a clear reason. Just a quiet shift where being in your own body feels less heavy, less tense, less guarded. You're not scanning situations the same way. You're not anticipating the same outcomes. You're not carrying that underlying pressure that used to sit in the background of everything you did. And the strangest part is, you might not even be able to say exactly what left, but you'll feel the absence of it. When something truly ends, you don't always gain clarity, you lose weight. That's how you know this isn't temporary. This isn't a mood, this isn't a mindset shift. This is something that your system recognizes as finished. And once your body stops holding on to something, your entire way of moving through life starts to change, because you're no longer compensating for something that isn't there anymore. Once the burn is done, once the pressure clears, once your body lets go of what it was holding, something replaces it. And it's not intensity, it's not urgency, it's not some overwhelming surge of motivation. It's ease, not laziness, not passivity, real, grounded ease in how you move. Things that used to require effort don't feel the same anymore. Decisions that would have taken hours of thinking now take minutes. Actions that used to feel heavy now feel straightforward. You're not pushing yourself to move, you just move because there's nothing in the way. That's the difference. Before, you were constantly negotiating with yourself. Should I do this? Is this the right move? What if it goes wrong? What if I'm not ready yet? That internal back and forth was draining more energy than the actual action itself. Now that negotiation starts to disappear. The moment you stop arguing with yourself is the moment everything becomes easier to do. You don't feel the need to overanalyze every step. You don't need to build up the courage to do things you already know you should be doing. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. There's a quiet confidence that takes its place. Not loud, not performative, not something you need to show or prove. It's just there. You trust your own movement, and because of that, everything becomes more efficient. You waste less time in hesitation, you waste less energy in doubt, you move forward without dragging the past into every decision. This is what most people are actually looking for, even if they don't realize it. Not more motivation, not more discipline, just less resistance. Confidence isn't built by forcing yourself forward, it appears when there's nothing left pulling you back. And that's what this week leaves you with. Not a completely different life, not some dramatic external shift, but a version of you that moves cleaner, faster, and with far less weight attached to every step. Once you feel that even briefly, you understand something most people miss. You were never stuck because you didn't know what to do. You were stuck because something was still holding you in place. And now that it's gone, there's nothing left to negotiate with. And if you're still here, still watching, I genuinely appreciate you. If any part of this connected with you, then you're already moving through this the right way. You don't need to go searching for signs or trying to force clarity out of everything that's shifting. What's ending will end on its own, and what's real will stay without you having to fight for it. Let this week do what it came to do. You don't have to rush decisions, and you don't have to go back and fix what's already falling away. Just stay grounded in what feels clear, even if it's quiet, even if it's simple. Because by the time this settles, you won't be left confused, you'll be left lighter. And that's where everything starts to open up again.